gown stood before her like a cruel joke, a masterpiece of lace and pearls, the embodiment of every childhood dream she had ever had. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Instead, it felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the dark abyss below. Chichi clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. The air in the dressing room felt thick, suffocating, as if it carried the weight of something unseen. She should have been excited, but instead, a deep, unsettling feeling had settled in her chest. Chichi had only stepped outside for a moment, needing air, needing to escape the overwhelming chaos of bridesmaids giggling, relatives shouting, and makeup brushes dusting over her already perfect face. But the second she turned the corner, she froze. Adaora's voice, low, sultry, and dripping with something sickeningly sweet.
Chike, please don't marry her. You don't love her the way you love me.
Chichi's stomach lurched. The corridor tilted, and for a second, she thought she would collapse.
You know it's true,
Adaora continued, her voice almost pouring.
You've always wanted me. You settled for Chichi because you thought I would never look at you. But I do. I see you, Chike. I want you.
Chichi wanted to scream, to rip open the door and demand that Chike say something, anything to prove that Adaora was lying. But then he spoke.
I don't know what to do, Adaora.
The world cracked open beneath her feet. Not no, not this is wrong, not I love Chichi, just hesitation, just weakness. A strangled gasp escaped from her throat. There was silence, a heavy suffocating pause. Then Adaora giggled.
It's okay, baby, she whispered. Just say the word and we'll fix this.
Fix this? Fix what? Chichi stumbled backward, her heartbeat slamming in her ears. The corridor felt too long, too empty, as if it was stretching endlessly, trapping her inside. She barely made it back to her dressing room before her legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed onto the floor, the weight of betrayal pressing down on her chest like 1,000 stones. A broken sob tore from her throat, the kind of cry that didn't just come from pain. It came from something deeper, something ancient, something spiritual, something raw. Tears poured down her face, hot and endless, soaking into the fabric of her wedding robe. She cried like a child, loud, bitter, heart-wrenching, sobs that echoed through the empty room. She cried for the years of humiliation at Adaora's hands. She cried for the love she had given so blindly. She cried for the girl she used to be, the one who believed in happy endings. But then, it happened. The tears stopped. Not gradually, not with sniffles or hiccups, they just stopped. Her breath evened out, the shaking ceased, her body went completely still. She lifted her head, her face streaked with tears, her eyes vacant, hollow, and unreadable. And then she smiled. It was a cold, eerie thing, a smile that didn't belong to a bride, a smile that belonged to someone who had just made a decision, a smile of someone that was possessed. Chichi inhaled deeply, wiping her tear-stained cheeks with the back of her hand. She stood up, slowly, gracefully, as if she hadn't just been shattered beyond repair. She walked to the mirror and looked at herself. The bride in the reflection was not the same woman who had woken up that morning. This one was dangerous. This one was smiling.
The wedding will go on,
she whispered to herself, adjusting the lace on her dress. Her lips curled higher.
I will be the perfect bride.
She would walk down that aisle, she would kiss Chike, she would dance, laugh, and smile for the cameras, and she would make them pay in ways they never saw coming. The music swelled as the wedding procession began. Chichi stood at the entrance of the grand cathedral, A vision in white, the heavy gown clung to her like a second skin, its lace details delicate and intricate, like the web of a spider waiting for its prey to step in. The guests turned towards her, their expressions filled with awe and adoration. To them, she was a perfect bride, a woman deeply in love, stepping into her happily ever after. If only they knew. Chichi's grip tightened on the bouquet in her hands. White roses, a symbol of purity and devotion. How ironic. She took the first step forward, and another step. The click of her heels echoed through the hall. At the end of the aisle, Chichi stood waiting. His smile was hesitant, uncertain, as if he could sense something was off, but couldn't place it. And beside him stood Adara, Chichi's elder sister, the golden child, the beautiful one, the one who had spent years tearing Chichi apart piece by piece. The earliest memories were always painful. Adara had always been cruel. She was the kind who pushed you into the fire and laughed as you burned. Chichi could still hear her voice from when they were children.
You are so ugly, Chichi. I don't even know why Mama and Papa keep you around.
Adara was 4 years older, and she had always been their parents' favorite. Their father would always beam with pride whenever Adara walked into a room, while their mother would gush over her beauty. Chichi, on the other hand, was an afterthought, a burden, a mistake. And Adara never ever forgot that. She never forgot the memory she had with her elder sister. As kids, Adara would mock her looks in front of relatives. If Chichi cried, she would roll her eyes and call her weak. If Chichi had a toy, Adara would break it in front of her face just to watch her cry. If Chichi had friends, Adara would whisper lies into their ears, turning them against her. By the time Chichi was 16, she had learned never to trust her sister again. But Chichi was different, or so she had thought. Now, standing in front of them both, she fought the urge to vomit.
I love you, Chichi, Chichi had whispered just last night.
Liar!
I will always choose you, he had promised.
Weak! She reached the altar, smiling beautifully, her lips trembling just enough to look like a nervous bride. Adara was smirking, the same cruel smirk she had worn since childhood. A silent message.
I win, Adara said with a silent message.
Chichi tilted her head slightly, returning the smile.
Enjoy it while you can, sister.
She turned back to the priest.
Let's begin.
The church was silent except for the voice of the priest, his deep baritone filling the grand hall. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in the presence of God, family and friends to witness the union of this man and this woman in holy matrimony. Chichi stood still, her hands resting lightly on the bouquet. Her fingers were tightening slightly at the weight of those words. If anyone can show just cause why these two may not lawfully be joined together, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. For a brief, terrifying second, Chichi wondered if Adara would speak, if Chichi would, if anyone would stand up and say the truth. But the room remained silent. The priest nodded and turned to Chichi. Do you, Chichi, take this woman, Chichi, to be your lawfully wedded wife? Chichi swallowed, his jaw clenched, and his eyes flickered, just for a second toward Adara. But Chichi saw it. That moment of weakness, that hesitation. She forced herself to keep smiling, though inside, her heart was cracking apart like shattered glass. I do. The words came from Chichi's mouth, but they felt empty, like he was saying them because he had no choice. The priest nodded and turned to Chichi. Do you, Chichi, take this man, Chichi, to be your lawfully wedded husband? Chichi blinked slowly, the weight of the moment crushing her from inside out. She should have said no. She should have run from this altar, from this nightmare, from those people who never truly loved her. But instead, she let out a soft breath, tilted her head slightly, and smiled.
I do.
The room erupted in applause. The priest lifted his hands with a warm smile.
By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may now kiss the bride.
The moment froze in time. The air grew thick, suffocating. Chichi saw the hesitation in Chiki's eyes before he forced himself forward, before his lips met hers in the most empty, lifeless kiss of her life. She felt nothing, no warmth, no love, just betrayal, pressing against her lips like a silent confession. And the guests cheered. Adaora clapped the loudest. Chichi's fingers curled tightly around her bouquet.
Enjoy the moment, sister. She lowered her lashes, keeping her face soft, innocent, untouched.
But inside, she was calculating, preparing, waiting. The game had only begun for something really dangerous. The wedding reception was perfect, or at least that's what everyone saw. The grand ballroom shimmered with golden lights, the scent of fresh roses filling the air. Laughter echoed across the hall as guests swayed to the music, glasses clinking in celebration. The cake stood tall, adorned with delicate white and gold details, a symbol of what this day was supposed to be: pure, joyful, and unforgettable. But Chichi felt nothing. She sat beside Chiki at the high table, the center of attention, the perfect bride in a perfect world. He reached for her hand, fingers lacing with hers in a gentle, practiced gesture. Chichi let him. She let her lips part in a soft smile. Let the guests see what they wanted to see, a happy blushing bride. But deep inside, her mind was far, far, far away. Sitting across from her was Adaora, the real bride in waiting. Adaora's eyes sparkled with mischief. As she lifted her champagne glass, she winked at Chiki so subtly that if Chichi hadn't been watching closely, she might have missed it. Everything about this moment burned. The knowledge that the man beside her had already been stolen before he was ever truly hers. That her own sister had played this game so well, so ruthlessly, that Chichi was left standing in the ruins of her own dreams. And yet, she smiled. She ate the food. She danced when Chiki pulled down to the floor. She laughed when his friends toasted to their future. And when it was time to leave for the wedding suite, she let Chiki hold her hand, guiding her through the crowd as they showered them with petals and cheers. She let him pull her into the car that would take them away from the celebration. She let him whisper, "You look so beautiful, Chichi." She let him, she let him, she let him. Because soon, she would take everything back. The hotel room was lavish, the kind only the wealthiest in Lagos could afford. A king-sized bed draped in silky white sheets. A balcony overlooking the city, champagne waiting on the bedside table. It was supposed to be the beginning of their forever. Instead, it was the first night of their lie. Chiki stood near the door, his nervous energy filling the room. He hadn't touched her since they left the reception. Not really. Now, he loosened his tie, his movements too stiff, too forced.
Chichi,
She turned slowly to face him. For the first time since the vows, she let go of the act. The smile faded, the light in her eyes dimmed, and Chiki froze. He saw it, the shift. The bride he had walked down the aisle with was gone. In her place stood a woman he did not recognize. Chichi stepped closer, the train of her wedding gown dragging softly against the floor.
"Why did you do it?"
Chiki swallowed.
"What?"
"Don't lie to me." Her voice was calm, unshaken. Chiki flinched. The man who had smiled beside her, who had kissed her in front of hundreds, flinched.
"I heard everything,"
Chichi whispered, tilting her head slightly.
"You and Adaora, every word."
A flicker of fear flashed in his eyes. Chichi inhaled slowly, then smiled again, but it wasn't the same smile she had worn earlier. This one was different.
"Do you love her?"
she asked softly. Chiki's jaw tightened. A moment passed, then another moment passed again, and then he dropped his head. His silence was the answer. Chichi exhaled. She had prepared for this. She thought she was ready, but still, something inside her broke in a way she wasn't sure she could ever repair. She stepped away from him, her fingers tracing the silk sheets of the bed. "It's okay." Chiki's eyes snapped back to hers. "What?" She smiled again, wider. "I said it's okay." She turned to him, her face unreadable. "I understand now." His shoulders relaxed, but only slightly. "Chichi, Shh." She reached up, pressing a single finger to his lips. "Tonight is our wedding night," she murmured. Then she laughed, a soft breather sound. "So let's enjoy it." And then she kissed him. Not out of love, not out of desire, but because she wanted to feel the moment when the last piece of her old self died. When the transformation was complete, Chike kissed her back because what else could he do? But Chichi was the only one who knew the truth. She wasn't kissing her husband, she was kissing her first victim. The morning after her wedding should have been filled with warmth. Sunlight should have kissed her skin. Soft whispers of love should have drifted through the air. She should have woken up in the arms of the man she loved, feeling cherished and adored. But none of that happened. Instead, Chichi woke up in a cold, unfamiliar bed. The sheets tangled around her like a cage. Chiki was already awake, not in bed, not beside her, but standing by the window, shirtless, staring outside with his hands on his hips like a man carrying the weight of a secret he couldn't bear. For a long moment, she just watched him. The broad shoulders she used to admire, the man she used to dream of spending forever with. Now, all she saw was a stranger. A weak, guilty, disgusting stranger. She sat up slowly, letting the silk sheets slide off her skin. Chiki heard the movement and tensed before turning to face her. "Good morning." His voice was hoarse, like a man who hadn't slept. Chichi tilted her head slightly, searching his eyes. There it was, that flicker of guilt, that hesitation. Even now, he couldn't look at her properly. Chichi smiled, soft, sweet, innocent. "Good morning, love." Something in his expression shifted. It was subtle, but she saw it. The moment where he wondered just for a second if she knew, if she was playing along. And she was. Oh, she was. She stretched, lazily yawning, pretending to be at peace. "Last night was beautiful," she whispered. She wanted to see his reaction. Chiki nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. "Yeah, it was." Chichi swung her legs over the bed, rising slowly, letting the white lace of her nightgown flow around her like mist. "You're acting strange," she pouted slightly, walking up to him. "Is something wrong?" He blinked. No. I just have a lot on my mind." Chichi reached up, cupping his jaw with her soft hands. Her skin was warm, but to her it felt like touching something rotten. "You're my husband now," she whispered, searching his face. "You can tell me anything." His breath hitched, because they both know the one thing he couldn't tell her, that he loved her sister. That last night, while he lay beside his wife, he had been thinking of someone else. Chichi let her fingers trail down his arms before she pulled away, laughing softly. "You should shower, love." She turned back toward the bed. "We have a family brunch to attend." She felt his hesitation before she heard his sigh. "Yeah, okay." He disappeared into the bathroom, and the moment she heard the water running, her smile vanished. She sat at the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Her hands were shaking, not from sadness, not from hurt, from something much darker. This was just the beginning. The restaurant was elegant, buzzing with light, chatter, and soft music. Chichi sat at the head of the table, next to her husband, who was playing the role of the devoted newlywed perfectly. Her mother was beaming, dabbing at the corner of her eyes. "My baby girl is married. I'm so happy for you." Chichi smiled. "Thank you, Mama." Adora sat across from her, looking like a queen in gold silk, sipping a mimosa like she hadn't just shattered her sister's world. Their father laughed, clapping Chike on the back. "Now you are part of the family, son. You married well." Adara smiled. "Very well." Their eyes met. Chichi didn't blink. Adara's lips curved slightly, a silent challenge. "You know I'm better than you, but what can you do about it?" Chichi's fingers dug into her lap. Not yet. She would play for her role. She would smile, laugh, hold her husband's hand, but the countdown had begun. Adara had always won, always manipulated her way into everything Chichi had ever loved. As children, it was her parents' love. As teenagers, it was Chichi's self-worth. Now, it was her husband. Adara smirked, tilting her glass toward Chike, her fingers trailing down the stem of the flute. Chike shifted beside Chichi, his hands tightening into fists on his lap. Chichi didn't miss it. "You're nervous, Chike." He cleared his throat. "What?" She turned to him, placing a gentle hand over his, her nails softly digging into his skin. "Relax, we're family now." Chike stiffened, but Adara laughed softly, taking a slow sip of her mimosa. "Yes, Chike," Adara murmured, eyes glinting. "Relax." Chichi smiled, reaching for a fork as if nothing was wrong. But inside her head, she was already calculating how to destroy them both. And this time, Adara wouldn't win. This time, Chichi wasn't the weaker sister. This time, she was the storm waiting to break them apart. Chichi played her part flawlessly. She laughed when Chike's friends made wedding jokes. She thanked her mother for the beautiful ceremony. She even let Chike kiss her in front of the family. Her lips soft and yielding, her hands resting on his chest like a wife who was madly in love. But behind every movement, every touch, every word, there was a hidden blade. She was not in love. She was waiting to devour, waiting to destroy, waiting for death. When they arrived at Chike's house, their house, it felt like stepping into a carefully designed lie. The living room was pristine, filled with elegant furniture and soft golden lighting. A home built for love, laughter, and the future together. But Chichi knew better. This was a house of betrayal, a house where her husband had whispered "I love you" to another woman, a house where her sister had probably stood before, breathing the same air, touching the same things. The moment the door closed behind them, Chike let out a deep sigh. Finally, his voice was weary. Chichi turned to him, her hands clasped in front of her, eyes wide with concern. "Are you okay, love?" Chike hesitated, then forced a small smile. "Yeah, just exhausted." Chichi nodded slowly, stepping forward, close enough to touch him, close enough to see the unease in his eyes. "You are tense." She reached up, her fingers lightly grazing his shoulder. "Let me help." Chike blinked, startled. "What?" "I will run a bath for you." A perfect wife, a perfect act. Chike hesitated before nodding. "That sounds nice." The water was warm. Fragrant oil swirled into the tub, filling the air with the scent of lavender and something deeper, something calming. Chichi knelt beside the bathtub, swirling the water lightly with her hand. Chike entered the bathroom, his shirt undone, his movements slow, hesitant. "Come," she whispered, her voice like silk. Chike sat on the edge of the tub, watching her closely. "You don't have to do this, Chichi." Chichi tilted her head, blinking innocently. "Do what?" "Pretend." His voice was low, guilty. Chichi smiled. "I am not pretending, love." Chike swallowed, his hands tightened into fists on his lap. He didn't know how deep this game went. Didn't know that Chichi was already mapping out his destruction with every breath he took. She reached for a small glass bottle beside the tub, essential oils, pouring a few drops into the water. Chike's eyes flickered towards it. "What is that?"
Relaxation blend, she murmured, stirring the water with her hand. It helps the body loosen up. Don't be scared. She looked up at him through her lashes. You trust me, don't you? Chichi exhaled. Slow. Heavy. Of course, Chichi. A beautiful lie. He slid into the warm water, letting out a sigh as the heat soaked into his muscles. Chichi sat beside the tub, resting her chin on her palm, watching, waiting, studying the way his breathing slowed just a little. The way his eyelids fluttered. You're tired, love. She reached out, gently trailing her fingers through his damp hair. Chichi hummed, his head tilting slightly toward her touch. He didn't see the way her smile sharpened, how her eyes darkened, how she smiled and stopped crying like the night she was possessed on the wedding day. You should rest, she whispered. Chichi sighed again, his body sinking deeper into the water. And Chichi, she sat there, watching, waiting, letting the first step of her game settle into place. Not to kill him, not yet, but to make him trust her completely before she destroys him from the inside out. Chichi slept soundly that night. His breathing was steady. His body was warm beneath the sheets. He had no idea that the woman lying beside him was no longer his wife, but his executioner in disguise. Chichi lay awake, still, silent, unmoving. Her gaze was fixed on the ceiling, the darkness of the room swallowing everything except for her thoughts in her mind. She listened to Chichi's breathing, listened to the way his chest rose and fell in a rhythm that should have been comforting, but all she felt was rage. He slept so peacefully, like a man who had nothing to fear, like a man who hadn't spent the night before his wedding whispering his love to another woman, like a man who hadn't sold his soul to the devil in a golden dress. Chichi's fingers curled into the sheets. She wanted to wake him, to shake him, to force him to see what he had done, to demand that he feel the same agony she felt, but she didn't do that. She simply turned her head slowly until she was facing him. His features were soft in sleep, his lips slightly parted, the same lips that had kissed Adara before they had ever kissed her. Chichi's lips curved into a slow, cold smile. Sleep well, my love, she whispered. Then she closed her eyes. She had a long game to play. When Chichi woke up, the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. The sound of soft humming drifted from the kitchen. For a moment, he blinked in confusion, his mind struggling to adjust. Had last night been real? Had the wedding happened? Had the woman beside him, the one he had betrayed, truly accepted everything so easily? He sat up, running a hand over his face. Then he smelled it: toast, eggs, and coffee. Breakfast. He climbed out of the bed slowly, making his way toward the kitchen, and there she was, Chichi, his wife, wearing a light silk robe, her hair slightly messy, standing by the stove as if nothing had happened, as if she wasn't supposed to be broken, devastated, ruined. She turned when she heard him, her face lighting up in a soft, beautiful smile. Good morning, love, she said sweetly. Chichi hesitated. Morning, he said slowly, watching her. I made breakfast. He hesitated again, glancing at the table where 2 plates were neatly set. You didn't have to, but I wanted to, she cut in, tilting her head. I am your wife now. This is what a wife does. She stepped closer, resting a warm hand on his chest. Sit down, Chichi, she murmured. Let me take care of you. Something about the way she said it made the hairs on the back of his neck stand, but he couldn't place why. So he sat and ate and let himself believe just for a second that everything was normal. But Chichi, she just watched him, watched the way he swallowed carefully, his body still tense beneath the surface. He was starting to feel it, the sense of doubt, that feeling that something wasn't quite right. She smiled to herself, taking a slow sip of her tea. This was just the beginning. Later that afternoon, Chichi found herself at her parents' house. Her mother had insisted that she come over. We need to talk about how married life is treating you, Chichi? And Chichi had agreed because Adara would be there. That's why she went. And it was time to test the waters. She arrived in a fitted floral dress, her wedding ring shining under the sunlight, her hair pulled into a soft bun. The perfect wife, the happy bride. She greeted her mother, kissed her father on the cheek, and sat in the living room with her legs crossed, sipping the orange juice her mother had placed in front of her. And then Adora walked in. Chichi didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't blink. Adora raised a brow, sliding into the chair across from her. "Look at you," she murmured, smirking slightly. "You actually look happy." Chichi tilted her head slightly, innocent, confused. "Why wouldn't I be?" she asked sweetly. Adora's smirk didn't fade. "No reason," she just said lightly, sipping her own drink. But her eyes were searching, watching, waiting. Chichi had known Adora her whole life. She knew when her sister was testing for weakness, knew when Adora was waiting to see if she would break. So she gave her nothing. She just smiled, tilting her head slightly. "You should come over sometime, Adora," she said softly. "Visit me and Chiki. We are so happy. It would be nice." Adora blinked for a split second. She hesitated, then she laughed. "Maybe I will." Chichi set down her glass. "I'll be waiting." After Chichi visited her family, she went back home. Chichi sat in front of the mirror that night, slowly running a comb through her hair. The house was quiet. Chike was in the bedroom pretending to be reading a book, but she could feel his eyes on her every time she moved. The air between them was different now. He spoke to her softly, still called her "my love" whenever he needed something, but there was hesitation in his voice now, a slight pause before he reached for her hand, a flicker of doubt behind his eyes. He didn't know why, didn't understand what had changed, but Chichi did. She had become something new, not the weak girl he had once betrayed, not the fragile woman he had tossed aside for a sister. No, she had become something else entirely, something that was watching him, something that was waiting. She set the comb down, exhaling softly. "Chike," she called out, her voice light and airy. She smiled at her reflection, soft, beautiful, innocent. "Come here." A pause, then footsteps, slow, careful, like a man who wasn't sure if he was walking towards safety or a trap. He appeared behind her in the mirror, his reflection tired, uncertain. She turned slightly, looking up at him through her lashes. "You don't touch me anymore," she whispered. Chiki tensed. "What? Of course I do." Chichi tilted her head, watching him, silent, unblinking. She let her fingers trail over his wrist slowly, delicately. "You hesitate," she murmured. Chiki swallowed, his throat working hard. I don't." Chichi could feel it. "Come closer," she whispered. He obeyed. She reached up, pulling him toward her slowly until he was kneeling beside her, their faces inches apart. She could see it now, the growing fear, the way his body was tensing, unsure. He was beginning to realize it, that something was very, very wrong. Chichi smiled. "I love you, Chiki." The words were empty, hollow, but she said them so beautifully, so convincingly, that even he had to pretend they were real. He smiled back, but it was forced. "I love you too, Chichi." Another lie coming from Chiki, and one day soon she would make him choke on it. The next morning, Chichi was in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. She already knew who it was. She wiped her hands on the towel, moving slowly, deliberately before answering. And there she was, Adara, dressed in a sleek red dress, smelling like expensive perfume, her lips curled into a knowing smirk. "Good morning, sister." Chichi leaned against the door frame, tilting her head. "To what do I owe this surprise?" Adora stepped forward, eyes scanning the room behind Chichi like she owned the house. "You said I should come and visit now," she said smoothly, "so here I am." A game, that was what it was. A test. Adara wanted to see if she had won, if Chichi had broken. Chichi smiled. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. Adara's heels clicked against the floor as she walked in, taking in every detail. The clean counters, the framed wedding pictures, the lingering scent of breakfast in the air. It looked like a happy home, like nothing was wrong. "Where is your husband?" Adara asked, casually. Chichi turned, closing the door behind her softly. "He's still in bed though." Adara's lips twitched. "Is a late riser?" Chichi smiled. "He was very tired last night, that's why." Adara blinked, and for the first time since she walked in, Chichi saw it. The slight flicker of something else in her sister's eyes. Jealousy. Adara had thought Chichi would be suffering, had expected to see a woman falling apart. Instead, she saw a woman who wasn't breaking, a woman who looked like she had won. Chichi poured 2 glasses of juice, handing one to her sister. Adara took it, studying her. "You seem different," she murmured. Chichi took a slow sip. "Do I?" Adara's eyes narrowed. She could feel it. Something was off. Something was wrong. Chichi held her gaze, calm, unreadable. Adara was the one to look away first. "Good." Chichi smiled to herself, swirling the juice in her glass. The house was too quiet as Chichi poured a fresh glass of juice again. She wasn't in a rush. She wanted Adara to sit in that living room, watching, waiting, thinking. Chichi had invited her here, but Adara had come for one reason only: to see if her little sister was falling apart. The thought almost made Chichi laugh. Adara still thought she was in control. She still thought Chichi didn't know. How amusing. "You've changed," she murmured. Chichi sat down across from her, perfectly poised. "What do you mean?" Adara tilted her head slightly. "I don't know," she mused, swirling the juice in her glass. "Something's just different about you, Chichi." Chichi smiled sweetly. "I am married now, sister. Of course I have changed." Adara's lips twitched slightly, but she said nothing. She was waiting, testing, still testing her little sister, trying to see if Chichi suspected anything. But Chichi had spent a lifetime watching her sister manipulate people. She wasn't going to make it that easy. She leaned back slightly, taking a sip of her own juice. "So how are things with you?" Adara blinked, caught off guard. "Me?" Chichi smiled. "Yes, you, sister. You are always so busy now. You hardly have time for family. It's nice to just sit and talk." Adara hesitated. Chichi could see the tiny flicker of doubt in her eyes. Good. Let her wonder. Let her start to feel like maybe, just maybe, she was the one being played. "Things are fine," Adara finally said. "That's good to hear," Chichi murmured. For a few moments, they just sat there, 2 sisters, 2 liars, 2 players, 2 women playing a very dangerous and evil game. Chichi's footsteps sounded on the stairs. Adara's eyes flickered towards the staircase. Just for a second, Chichi noticed and saw her, and she smiled. "Oh, look," she said softly. "Your favorite person is awake." Adara's fingers tightened slightly around her glass. It was so small, so quick, but Chichi caught it. She turned toward the stairs just as Chichi stepped into view. He froze for a second. His face went pale because he hadn't expected to see Adara sitting in his house, sipping juice, looking completely at ease. He shot a quick look at Chichi. She tilted her head slightly, her smile never fading. "Good morning, love," she murmured. Chichi hesitated. "Morning," he said slowly, his voice tight. He looked at Adara again, then back at Chichi. He knew that Chichi was doing something. That game she was playing, some kind of twisted game. But he didn't know what, didn't know how deep this game had gone. Chichi stretched, reaching for a napkin. "Adara came to visit," she said lightly. Chichi swallowed hard. "Oh, I see." Adara watched him carefully, and that was when Chichi saw it. The moment Adara realized something wasn't right, the flicker of suspicion in her eyes as she noticed how Chichi was acting, how he looked like a man trapped between 2 fires. Chichi almost laughed because Chike hadn't told her. He hadn't told Adara that Chichi knew everything that happened on our wedding day, which meant Adara still thought she had control, still thought she was untouchable. Chichi set her napkin down, looking between them both. "You two are so quiet," she mused, sipping her juice. Adara smiled a little too quickly. "No, just surprised to see Chike looking so tired." Chichi giggled, reaching for Chike's hand. "Oh, he's been working so hard. You know I told you. Haven't you been working so hard, love? Haven't you?" Chike flinched, and Adara saw it. Her brows lifted slightly, her smirk faltering for a second. Chichi squeezed Chike's hands, looking at him adoringly. "You know, Adora, you should come over more often," she said swiftly. "It's so nice having you here. Please be coming more and more." Adora's lips parted slightly. For the first time, she looked unsure. She glanced at Chike, then back at Chichi, and in that moment, Chichi knew she was getting to her. She was winning. Adora had come here expecting to see a broken woman. Instead, she saw a woman completely in control, and she didn't know what to do about it. "Maybe I will," Adora finally murmured. Chichi smiled, reaching for a glass. "Good," she whispered. "Let her keep coming back. Let her keep thinking she has the upper hand, because when the time was right, Chichi would tear it all away, and Adora wouldn't even see it coming." Adora stayed for lunch. She sat across from Chichi and Chike, chatting with their mother over the phone, laughing like she didn't have a single worry in the world, like she wasn't sitting in the home of the woman she had betrayed. Chichi watched her sister carefully as she served food onto Chike's plate, making sure to brush her fingers against his hand just a little too long. Adara noticed. Her eyes flickered slightly, not with anger, not with fear, but with curiosity. "She's testing me," Chichi thought. Adara was waiting for her to break, to sleep, to do something that would confirm suspicion, but Chichi didn't break. Instead, she turned to Chike, pressing a kiss to his cheek, letting her lips linger just enough to make him shift uncomfortably. "Eat up, love," she whispered. Chike tensed. Adara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. For the first time, her smirk disappeared. "Good." Chichi picked up her glass, taking a slow sip of water, her lips curling over the rim. "So, sister," she murmured, placing the glass down, "how is your love life?" Adara blinked. She wasn't expecting that. Chike stiffened beside Chichi, his grip on his fork tightening slightly. He was terrified. Terrified of what Chichi was doing, terrified of what Adara might say. Adara recovered quickly, swirling her wine. "Why do you ask?" Chichi smiled sweetly. "I just realized I don't know much about it, you know? You've always been so private." Adara laughed softly, but it was a little too forced. I'm just selective, you know how it is, you know, Lagos men, all this men." Chichi tilted her head. I understand." A long pause. Adara sipped her wine. Chichi watched her closely, waiting for any sign of weakness, and then there it was, the sleep. Then Adora placed her glass back on the table. Her fingers were shaking, not much, just a little, but Chichi saw it, and then she smiled. "You should bring someone over next time," Chichi said lightly. "It would be so nice to have another couple around, you know." Chichi sucked in a sharp breath. Adora's jaw tensed. For the first time since she walked into the house, she looked uneasy. "Maybe," she murmured. Chichi leaned back in her seat, her expression innocent. "You know I really admire you, sister." Adara blinked. "What? You admire me? How?" Chichi twirled her fork between her fingers, watching the way Adara's nails dug into the table. "You are always so confident," Chichi continued, tilting her head slightly. "So sure of yourself. It's impressive." Adara studied her carefully. For a long, heavy moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adara smirked again. "Confidence is power, little sister." Chichi's smile widened. "I couldn't agree more, sister." When lunch was over, Chike barely waited for Adora to leave before pulling Chichi aside. He gripped her wrist tightly, dragging her into the bedroom and slamming the door shut. "What are you doing?" he hissed, his voice low, urgent. Chichi blinked innocently. What do you mean, love? Chiki ran a frustrated hand through his hair. This little game you're playing. Eh? Chichi just stared at him because that was what he thought this was. A game. Something she was doing for fun. He had no idea how deep the waters ran, how much she had already planned, how much worse it was going to get. She stepped forward, lifting her hand to touch his face. Chiki flinched, and that was the moment she knew he was afraid of her, finally. Chichi smiled softly, tracing her fingers down his jaw. You are so tense, love. You are so tense. Relax. Chiki grabbed her wrist, pulling her hand away. Stop. Chichi sighed, stepping back. You are acting like I did something wrong. Chiki let out a short, harsh laugh. Because you did. Chichi arched a delicate brow. And what exactly did I do? He hesitated. He stepped closer again, voice lowering. I just asked my sister about her love life. Is that a crime? Chiki stared at her, his breathing uneven. He was starting to see it now, starting to understand. Chichi reached out, lightly touching his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. You're so jumpy, she whispered. Why is that, love? Chiki didn't answer. He just took a step back away from her. Chichi smirked. You should rest, she murmured. We have a long road ahead of us. Chiki swallowed hard, and for the first time since this began, he looked at her like he was standing in front of something he couldn't escape, like he had already lost. Chichi smiled, stepping around him, leaving the room without another word, because she knew the truth now, knew that Chiki was breaking, and Adara, she would be next. The house was silent when Chichi woke up, a heavy, eerie kind of silence. Chiki was still in bed beside her, his body tense, even asleep. His face was troubled, lips parted slightly, as if he had been whispering something in his dreams. Chichi watched him for a long moment. She wondered what he was dreaming about. Did he dream about Adora? Did he dream about the lies he told? Or did he dream about her, his wife, the woman lying beside him in bed, the woman he should fear most? Chichi's lips curled into a slow, cold smile. She reached out lightly, tracing her fingers over his jaw, watching as his breath hitched slightly. Then she leaned in, pressing a soft, chilling whisper against his ear. I love you, Chiki. His entire body jerked. His eyes flew open, wild, terrified. He turned to her quickly, his face pale, his breathing uneven. Chichi, Chichi. His voice was hoarse, laced with something close to fear. Chichi simply smiled. Good morning, love. Chiki swallowed hard, blinking rapidly like he was trying to clear his mind. I had a nightmare, he muttered, rubbing his forehead. It was so real. Chichi tilted her head, watching him carefully. Oh, she murmured. What about? Chiki hesitated. She saw it, the way his eyes flickered slightly, the way he struggled to run and answer. He was hiding something, lying again. He finally sighed. Nothing, just stressed, I guess. Chichi nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. You should rest, love, she whispered. She reached out, brushing his damp forehead with her fingers, letting them linger for a second too long. You look so tired, Chiki flinched. Chichi laughed softly, rolling out of the bed. I'll make you some tea. She then left the room without waiting for a response. She didn't need one because she had already won this round. The walls are closing in. By the time Chiki came downstairs, he looked different, not just tired, shaken, afraid. Like something was creeping into his mind, something he couldn't escape. Chichi set down a cup of tea in front of him, watching him closely. Drink, love, it will help. Chiki stared at the tea for a second, too long before finally picking it up. His hands were shaking. Chichi beat back a smirk. She took a slow sip of her own tea, pretending to be completely at ease, pretending she wasn't watching his every move. Then he spoke. Adora called me last night. Chichi's fingers froze around her cup. She looked up slowly, her expression clearly neutral. Oh! Chiki hesitated. Yeah, she said she wants to talk to me alone. Alone? Chichi took another slow sip of tea, hiding a smirk behind the rim of her cup. Adara was getting nervous. She was sensing something was wrong, and now she was trying to regain control. How predictable. "That's nice," Chichi murmured, setting her cup down. Chike blinked, caught off guard. You're not mad?" Chichi smiled. Why would I be?" Chike opened his mouth, then closed it back because there was nothing he could say. It was so weird. If he admitted he thought she would be mad, then he was admitting there was something to be mad about, and he couldn't do that. So instead, he just nodded slowly, taking another sip of tea. But Chichi, she knew Adara was planning something, and she was going to let her do it because Adara had no idea that every step she took was leading her straight into Chichi's hands and trap. Later that evening, Chike left the house. He told Chichi he was going to meet a friend. Another lie. Chichi didn't call him out on it. She simply kissed him on the cheek and whispered a soft, "Be safe, love," and sent him on his way. Then she waited. Waited for the moment he would arrive at Adara's apartment. Waited for the moment their voices would lower to whispers of secrets and fear. Chichi had always known her sister well, and Adara was many things, but she wasn't subtle, which was why Chichi already knew what was happening before Chike even stepped through the front door. She already knew what Adora would say. "Chike, listen to me. Something is wrong with Chichi. She's acting different. I don't know how to explain it, but I can feel it. Something isn't right. I think she knows." Chichi leaned back on the couch, sipping her wine as she imagined her sister's desperate voice. It was almost funny. The way Adora still thought she had power, the way she still believed she could fix this, it was already too late. Because Chichi wasn't the one who needed to be afraid. No, she was the one who was in control, and soon they would both realize it. The house was silent when Chike returned. Too silent. He closed the door softly, his heart pounding harder than it should. It was stupid. He had done nothing wrong, at least not tonight. He had only gone to see Adara to talk to figure out if they were in danger. But the moment he stepped inside, he felt it. Something was wrong. Something was waiting.